Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for June 16th, 2025. Welcome all our viewers at home and those in our audience this evening. We're going to begin tonight with number 1, audience communications. I see no blue slips this evening in the audience, so we will move on to item 2, the Committee of the Whole, and that would be me. So we're going to start out with 2A, the proposed Board of Ed meeting schedule for 25-26. And Mrs. Oquist, we're going to chat about that.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, President Bradford.
You're welcome.
It was great to be able to go through this. Last week, we caught a couple of things that we wanted to change. I wanted to recognize our newest colleague to the table. It pointed out something that made a lot of sense, which is how we lay out the meeting schedule. And I think for the first time in at least a couple of decades, we made that change, and it's reflected in it. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. It does. So I want to just note for the board, and I know I shared this in my update to you, but I just want to go over that the changes that we made since the study session are in July. We went from July 14th to July 21st. That will be our one meeting in July. It will include the items related to the annual organizational meeting that will be built into the regular meeting. And so that is instead of July 14th. We did add a workshop in March, on March 2nd, 2026. Mm-hmm. We also shifted the June dates back. So we are no longer meeting on June 1st, which is the Monday following the commencement ceremony weekend. We will go through our normal cadence of meetings, starting with June 8th, the study session, June 15th, Committee of the Whole, and June 22nd to wrap up our regular meetings for the school year. I believe those are the only changes since the last time you saw this.
Great. Does anybody have any questions, comments regarding the schedule? Okay, you're going to.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, then we will bring to the board, Mrs. Acosta, the first meeting of the year, so we will need to vote on that next week. That will be our last meeting of this school year, and we are required to vote on the first meeting of the year, and at that organizational meeting, we will adopt the meeting calendar for the year. So we will be voting on the item for the first meeting of July 21st, 2025.
Great, thank you very much. All right, we can, that closes item 2, the Committee of the Whole for me. We're going to move on to item 3, the Finance Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Bradford. We do have one very important item on the agenda tonight, and that is our budgets for 24-25 and 25-26. And here to help us is the ever-popular Allison Smith.
Thank you. I'll pass these around.
Thank you.
Hard copies, I know everybody has an electronic copy, but sometimes
24-25.
it's nice to have, yes, something to write notes on. And then this is the
Thank you.
proposed budget coming around next.
25-26. I've got this one.
I have this one printed out today.
And thank you. I know we've had a lot of time over the last several months to lead us up to tonight and our discussion of a final budget amendment for this school year and a proposed budget for next year. So thank you. I appreciate the board always does set aside a lot of time for this, and I know how important it is to you and it's important to us. So definitely glad to get your input and walk through the final version. So some good news even since last week. We're always making tweaks. So I'm going to suggest, I looked back at what we did last year, and last year we ran through the proposed budget book because that captures both the final amendment from the 24-25 school year, and it also captures the proposed budget. So I thought we could walk through that, and I'll cover any major changes in the final amendment and the proposed budget. So, but if
you'd like us to pull out the 24-25 or the 25-26.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let's see.
Perfect. So you'll see we have, for our final amendment for the 24-25 school year, starting off with the general fund revenue, it always amazes me, you can have so many different line item changes, and then in total, you pretty much feel like you're ending up where you started. So that is the case with our revenue here. So for reference, in our first budget amendment, the revenue projected for the general fund was $183.2 million, and for the final amendment, we're at $183.3. So barely, Not much change overall, but of course, lots of line items. You'll recall in March, I shared the great news that we continue to see nice interest earnings on our balances, so we were able to adjust that here in the final budget amendment. Good news, bad news, we also had a line item that we get from the state for enrollment stabilization that because we didn't lose as many students this year, that enrollment stabilization payment was down, so that's reflected here in the final budget amendment. The latest news, hot off the presses, the state has published what our state aid payment will be for June, and we're receiving additional money for our transportation reimbursement, another $150,000. So I've included that in our final budget amendment as well. So a lot of good news. A few changes since March. We did have a few line items. I mentioned this last week at the study session that our Wayne County enhancement millage is just a bit down from where I expected it to be. I hope I'm just conservative in my budgeting and that we'll get a nice large payment in June, but hate to bank on it and then not have it come through fruition. Because the Wayne County enhancement millage is based on property tax values and collections across Wayne County, it's a bit harder to predict than just our local Livonia collection. So I budgeted for that. Another one that was of interest, and it makes sense when you stand back, was the indirect costs that we're able to recover from grants, managing those grants. It's down from last year, and it makes sense because last year was our last year of all of our COVID grants. And so with having more grant dollars, we were able to accrue more indirect costs for the general fund. So now we're right sizing to kind of pre-COVID levels of indirect cost recovery in the general fund. So that's what we have going on for the final amendment. A few highlights for the proposed budget, and we could spend a lot of time. I know Superintendent Oquist is forwarding the emails to the board about everything happening in Lansing. Lots of excitement up there. We don't have a budget yet for next year, so we're making our best estimates as we prepare a budget for ourselves. One of the things that was consistent across all the branches was a foundation allowance increase of $10,000 per pupil. That's not set in stone, but seeing that consistency across all three branches, we felt like that would be a comfortable number to go with for their proposed budget. So the proposed budget includes a $10,000 per pupil foundation allowance, which is up from this year's $9,608. So we've included that in the budget. What we've also included in general fund revenue is we've gotten the new property tax values for 2025 from the city of Livonia, and property tax values are up. So what that means is for our operating millage, we're going to collect some additional dollars from that, which then it's kind of a wash with our foundation allowance then, because at the end of the day, it's $10,000 per student. So it's just a shift in how much is coming locally and how much is coming from the state. What else? We've got a number of things that we included in here. We've also factored on a loss of students. We've seen that, sadly, for over a decade. Generally, our incoming kindergarten class has been smaller than our graduating senior. So other than a few years where we had some things, I'm thinking back to the pandemic. We saw kind of a larger drop as families explored other options for students. Other than that, we really aren't seeing huge changes. This year was a lower than normal drop, so what we're going into next year is a estimated loss of 75 students. As soon as we have our count in the fall in October, we'll share with the board an update on that and then how that'll impact our budget. But for now, we're counting on that 75 student loss. Another budget assumption for next year is our Wayne County enhancement millage. Just like Livonia's property tax values are up, so are the property tax values across Wayne County. So we can anticipate to see a few more dollars coming to us through the Wayne County enhancement millage. And those are some of the big highlights. So revenue this year in total was $183.3 for our final amendment, and next year the proposed includes $188.4. One of the other pretty significant changes in our line item that we're trying to be proactive on, so we don't have such a change in our first budget amendment, is the ever fun and popular Section 147s that come from the state. These are the state's way of helping districts cover retirement costs, also ways to help fund the pension system. This year, for Section 147C, the MIPSR's UAAL stabilization payments, the district received $11.7 million. Based on the proposed budgets that we are seeing, we estimate that payment's going to go up to $18 million. So what that means for us, that's the one, though, that's the flow-through. That's the one that we get the additional revenue, but then we have to remit it to ORA, so it's not really additional dollars available for us to spend, but it is something that will impact our revenue and something that'll impact our expenditures. So that's been reflected here in the proposed budget. I'll move on to expenditures unless there's any questions.
Mrs. Burton.
The loss of students. I assume that we are at the same rate statewide that we have been in years past, and what this is mostly reflecting is a reduced birth rate in the state
Absolutely.
of Michigan. I know Livonia has historically captured about 1% of the state of Michigan children that were born, and is that still the case in what we're basing this on?
That is still the case, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So it's not that the district is losing students, it's that the
Nope.
families are having fewer kids and later in life and so forth, so.
Yep. This is
that-
definitely something we're seeing statewide. I think the last thing I read was 2/3 of districts across the state of Michigan are in a state of declining enrollment because of lower birth rates. So I think that one of the reasons why we see that new categorical for enrollment stabilization payments, because it is impacting districts across the state. So
Okay.
very,
And as we've talked about so many times, you can't make cuts commensurate with the loss
Right.
oftentimes. So when we do work very closely to have our staffing reflect the number of students that we serve. But unfortunately, if you're losing 3 or 4 students at a school, you can't necessarily make any cuts to staffing. But
Right.
if we lost 3 or 4 students at 24 schools, all of a sudden you're up, between 75 and 100 student loss without the ability to make a great deal of adjustment to the staff or to the fixed costs that we have to run school each day. And so I will say we were able to, working with human resources and our elementary and secondary directors, work very closely in staffing our schools based on enrollment for next year. We're always watching kindergarten closely over the summer, but we have seen some very strong young fives numbers come in. The retention, keeping the families, not retention of students. Families in young fives going on to kindergarten. So we have some really strong positive pieces, but thank you, Mrs. Burton, for bringing that up, because it really is reflective of what we are seeing statewide. Not only the overall birth rate declining, the number of students, the number of children per family, and just in general, the number of families remaining, young people and families remaining in Michigan. And so this is a reflection of all of those pieces, but we still continue to have a very strong capture rate of the live births within our boundaries.
wonderful. Taking a look at our general fund expenditures, my eye always goes to the bottom of the page, right? Jumping to the good news is where our fund balance is going to end this school year. We're looking at an ending fund balance of just over 30 million, or 16.1%. For reference, what the Michigan School Business Officials, they recommend 15 to 20%, so very happy to see the fund balance still within that target. For the final budget amendment, again, this is one of those things where we have probably hundreds of individual line item changes, but they net out to, generally, the expenditures are the same as what they were in December, so not too much exciting news there. I did want to make one note, though. I'm sorry, I just said it was really flat. We did have one change, even since last week. We have a project that was approved by the board. It was network switches that is approved half out of the bond and half out of the general fund. And why it was half out of the general fund is because we anticipate an E-rate reimbursement for those general fund costs. I had reached out to our IT department and was under the impression that we weren't going to be getting any more invoices this school year. And if we don't have the invoices coming in this year, I don't want to tie up the budget and then have a variance come, October when we're doing our budget to actual. So I didn't budget for those invoices getting paid this school year, and we got that invoice. So thankfully, it came to us before the board voted on our final amendment. But you'll see on the line other central support, included in that line is our information technology costs. And that, if you look at the, which you don't need to flip, I can tell you, from our first amendment, it was at 5.8 million, and it's up to 6.8 million. That would definitely catch your eye. That was, again, pre-approved cost by the board, and it was just a shift of when we're going to pay for those project costs. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. For the proposed budget, we have a number of items that have gone into the proposed budget. I'll walk you through each one of them, but jumping down to the bottom of the page, again, good news to report. We do have a planned use of fund balance, but even with the planned use of fund balance, our projected ending fund balance for next year is 15.3%, so still within our target. We, again, have gone over this a lot, I know, for the board, but for the sake of our community, I'll walk through each one of those factors that we built into the proposed budget. First is that we'll have new collective bargaining agreements that will be coming to the board next week for your consideration and hopeful approval. What I factored in is the cost of those collective bargaining changes, the wage increases we are suggesting for our employee group. So that has been built into our proposed budget. I've also built in some estimated retirement savings. One of the things when we're doing negotiations, I generally factor that in for teachers when we're costing out what the proposals are, because we do have a consistent number of retirements each year in our teaching group. The other groups are a little bit more, there's a little bit more flux, but in looking back over the last 5 years, we definitely have some savings when we've got an employee retiring, and then we're generally hiring somebody at a lower rate, so we can capture some savings. So into our proposed budget, I'm estimating about $500,000 of savings from retirements and new employees coming on board. I've also, yep,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, of course,
If you could explain under other financing uses.
yes.
In the past, we've had between $500,000 and $1.5 million, and then in 25, 26, you proposed zero.
Yep, absolutely. That's our transfer to the capital projects fund, and we have had a lot of one-time revenues for the last couple of years, some of them being like the COVID grants. I know we had some grants that offset athletic costs and childcare costs. So instead of building our budget on those one-time revenues, what we have built into the general fund was that transfer to the capital projects fund. So for next year, I'm proposing that we go into the year with a zero, so no transfer to the capital projects fund, and then that could be something that we revisit during our first budget amendment, and we can see where we're coming in and revisit at that time. But for now, being more conservative and not including it in the budget for next year.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've factored in, every January, the state will issue new rates for health insurance premiums, what districts are allowed to pay on behalf of employees for single, two-person, and family coverage. So I've factored in increases for those health insurance costs. I've incorporated retirement rate changes. This was a big thing this year, if you'll recall, and I believe captured it in our first budget amendment. In last year, when they were telling us about the budget for this year, they were telling us that we would have a rate reduction for retirement. Instead of reducing the retirement rate, though, they gave us additional revenue to offset the costs. But next year, what they've published as far as the retirement rates is an actual reduction in the retirement rate. So I have adjusted the budget down for those retirement rate changes. As you'll recall, I remember talking about it at Cooper with the board. It's not quite as much as we were hoping for. We were hoping to see a reduction of 5.75%, but the state has stopped charging employees for the retiree health care costs, the 3%, and now we are seeing a 3% increase in employer retiree health insurance costs. So a shift from the employees to the...
No, they shifted it over, and it has
Yes.
significantly reduced the savings from the change in the MIPSR's retirement rate.
Yep.
So now it's a savings for staff, which is wonderful,
Yep.
but that cost is now onto the district.
So it's a net equal for the state, it just costs the district more.
Yes,
Lovely.
yes.
And as I've shared, the governor's budget, the executive budget, the Senate budget, and the House budget are significantly different in a lot of ways, but one of the ways in which they're different is the executive budget and the Senate budget maintains the lower retirement rate for districts. And so it remains at the 15.2%.
Yep.
And with the House proposal, because they're offering a higher per pupil foundation allowance, they are proposing keeping the retirement rate at 20.96. So we would not see that savings of approximately $4 million for next year, but we would have a much higher foundation allowance because the categoricals have been wrapped into that. So I'll just take us
Yes.
sideways
Yeah.
just a bit in that Normally, after all three budgets are shared publicly, then they begin negotiating in that process to come up with a final budget to present to the governor. And we have not seen that same level of discussion yet amongst the different entities. And indeed, we may not see a budget until August or September. They have to have theirs in place by October 1st at the latest. But there are so many different pieces of the puzzle, including a desire for the governor to have a roads bill plan in place. And that may impact the overall budgeting on school aid. And so there are just a lot of moving pieces. And so what we will share with you is, and we shared this at the study session as well, we felt like the one piece that was consistent was the approximately $390 increase in per pupil, bringing it up to 10,000. The House does propose a higher per pupil, but as I shared, it rolls in many of the categoricals for school safety, mental health, transportation, food service, all of those things which are normally separate line items into one larger per pupil amount. I don't think it's wise, nor obviously does Ms. Smith, to utilize the $12,000 as the per pupil allocation, because we would then, one, need to back out the categoricals, but two, we don't see that reflected in the executive and the Senate budget proposal. So I just want to make sure that we're sharing with you, which I know you do know this, but also with our community, that because they are so significantly different, we are taking a conservative approach to our planning for next year with regard to the per pupil funding, and then some increase with regard to some of the at-risk and EL funding. That is, again, consistent with the executive budget in the Senate. So there are positive elements to each of these budget proposals, and then there are elements that are less favorable. And so there is still quite a bit of work to be done by the legislature, but I want to, again, recognize Mrs. Smith for really immediately taking that most recent proposal and in a very detailed way going through each line item to determine the impact for LPS so that we can talk knowledgeably with our school lobbyists, with our state legislators, and so that was very, very helpful as well. So just wanted to interject that because that certainly could have an impact on having to make a budget amendment in the fall.
Mr. Johnson? Just want to let folks in our community know, too, at times we're asked, why the board or the cabinet are not doing anything more proactively toward the budget process. Just to let folks know that we are. We receive regular updates from MASB, which is the Michigan Association of School Boards, and the Michigan Association of School Administrators. And the superintendent, cabinet team, and board members frequently, when we get an alert that things are precarious, contact our legislators directly and contact and speak exactly to that or directly to them, whether that is by phone or by email, to point out exactly where the problems are with the potential, in this case, budget situation is. So I just don't want the community to think that we are just sitting and waiting. We are doing anything but. We're taking the information that Mrs. Smith is giving us, Mrs. Oquist is giving us, and contacting our folks to say, this is how it's impacting Livonia Public Schools. So thank you very much for providing that information for us promptly so we can intelligently and quickly get in touch with folks who the few folks who actually get to vote on that and hold the cards in their hands.
Yes. And collectively, really all of the major educational organizations, such as those you mentioned, as well as MEA, AFT, and the principal organizations, wrote a collective letter at the end of last week and shared it with the governor and the House and the Senate to implore them to get a budget in place so that we can appropriately plan for our students. And oftentimes hiring decisions are dependent upon this information. And so this is the hiring season. We're very busy doing that. And we want to be able to make sure we have a full staff in place. And finding out about these dollars in September or October is not helpful. And so that is really, right now, our greatest message is determine what that budget is, get that information on school aid to the schools and to the districts so that we can plan accordingly for the children we serve.
Just another, reason why having a fund balance is so important too. If we were sitting at a 5% fund balance, our conversation tonight would be very different.
Yeah.
Because we have a 15%, we have the ability to kind of wait it out, see what happens, so yeah,
Yeah.
definitely very important. So, a few other items of note going into the general fund, as Mr. Arvis pointed out, again, that other financing uses, which is our transfer to capital projects fund, has been excluded for the next year. We've talked about this before too, the property casualty insurance change. We're going to be making a change this year, moving to SETSAG, and we're seeing some pretty significant savings there, so that's been captured in the budget. We also have some natural through, retirements, some reduction in our staffing, and thankfully through retirements, that means very minimal in terms of layoffs, but we do have to adjust when we have declining enrollment. We have to adjust staffing accordingly. So all of those factors have gone into our budget, and we're looking at an ending fund balance next year of $29 million or 15.3%. I'll take us on to the funded projects unless there's any questions on the general fund. Okay. Moving on to the grants. Awesome to see, of course, this year, looking at total grants of just over $21 million. We've got three main sources those come from: local grants, state grants, and federal grants. Our largest source being the state sources. Lots of different categoricals from the state. So the final amendment captures our final allocations that we've received for this year and our best estimates going into next year. We did have a number of grants, you'll see in particular in that state sources section, that we have tentatively not planned to receive additional funds for next year. And if we do get more dollars, we'll bring that and include that in our next budget amendment. And you're seeing down, I'll point out just in the federal sources, really no COVID grants left, but those grants have all been spent at this point. So, and the funded projects is rather straightforward one, that the revenue we get, it matches the expenditures we get, so it's an estimated zero ending fund balance for the funded projects, both for the final amendment and our proposed budget for next year. Any questions on the grants?
Just one comment. There are a handful of districts around us that are in financial distress right now because they have used COVID dollars for ongoing expenses. So I would just like to thank both of you and the cabinet team, Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Oquist, for making sure that we use those one-time dollars for one-time expenditures that would benefit our kids for COVID-related issues. But Livonia needs to be very, very proud of their public school district, that we are not in financial distress. We have strong leadership who used those several $1 million worth of supports for our students, but used it really, really wisely. When I hear every now and then, even recently, of districts in financial distress because the COVID dollars are gone, honest to goodness, we knew those were only a few year long commitments. There's absolutely no reason for that. But Livonia needs to be very proud of this school district, that we utilize those entirely appropriately for our kids, but we did not hire people and then 2 or 3 years later realize we're going to have to lay them off because those dollars are not going to continue. So thank you again. And community, if you see our administrators around in our community, tell them thank you for utilizing your tax dollars really, really wisely.
Thank you.
One question
Yeah.
I have
Sure.
is, and Mrs. Jarvis may have a better idea because she is the president of the foundation.
Yes.
I noticed that we have a number in for this year.
Yep.
Which was our grant program, I
Yep.
presume, but you don't have anything budgeted for next year.
Yep, and that'll definitely get uploaded if we get,
That'll
yep.
be determined in August when the foundation has the annual meeting,
Okay.
Perfect.
and we'll learn how much we're going to put towards grants.
Okay, thanks both of you.
Man, I
Any
do
other
love
questions?
seeing those on Facebook. I see the pictures of all the so
Yeah.
happy
The way
staff.
it's being used,
Yes.
it's amazing.
Yes, that's fantastic.
Are you Mrs. Frank?
Yes, I
Okay.
I might have missed this in all the
Yeah.
number talk, but the 31AA,
Yep,
is that did you say, do we have a good idea that that's gonna be about 800, or are we still not really sure? Or is that included in the House?
I think that's being conservative. I think when
Okay.
we get our final budget, that amount will go up.
Okay.
So that's just us being conservative. I would estimate more than likely to be closer to 1.5, but we don't want to start spending money that's,
Because
Not-
hasn't it been cut significantly?
It had initially been cut by 92%, and then when they did the reconciliation budget last fall, they added most of those dollars back in. It is certainly included in each of the budgets, but in a bit of a different way, through the House, through the increase per pupil, and then in the other two with funding that at the higher level. So we have chosen to, again, wait out that particular portion because that was something that was unexpectedly cut and took us by surprise 2 years ago when that cut happened, and that school safety and mental health are two of the most imperative areas and are very staff heavy and costs that are wrapped around our people. And so we have utilized those dollars for some of the safety film and some of the other expenditures so that we did not have to fluctuate our staffing levels based on that.
yeah, that was very welcome. I know it saved us some money too in the bond for the thumb locks that we were installing on the door. We were able to charge to the safety grant.
Yeah.
President Bradford.
And in that note, the 35J.
Yep.
Literacy improvement, I see that's significantly decreased. Do we know anything about
Yeah,
that?
and that's primarily the carryover, what you see, the 523, what we haven't spent this year. We don't anticipate getting 35J next year. It wasn't in any of the three proposals, but that was one that we used to buy classroom library books as well as the summer books to send home. So thankfully those aren't ongoing costs. So it was a wonderful one-time grant and we used it well, and now that it's going away, we'll also see the expenditures going away too, decreasing. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Mrs. Berg.
Similar question for the benchmark assessments.
Yep.
Section 104I.
Yep, and similar, that one is a carryover, that 14,000, so that's not a new allocation from the state, being conservative on that grant, that we're right now just budgeting for what we haven't spent this year that we're able to use next year. And then in our first amendment, if the legislators do include that in the budget again, we'll increase that in December.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. The next page is our special education fund. This is the Act 18 fund that's funded through local property taxes, the special education millage, and it's operated by Wayne Risa. You'll see not too much of a change from this year to next year. We're continuing to run the same 4 programs that we have for a number of years. So what we have included in the final budget amendment is the actual budgets, approved by Wayne Risa for this year, as well as the budgets that they've approved for us for next year. You can see right there, still maintaining, just under $1 million fund balance. We keep that there so that if there are one-time costs that we need to incur for the Act 18 program, that we have some savings there that we can utilize for those things. So that's our special education fund. Yeah.
Under the expenditures,
Mhm.
you have transfer to other funds.
Yes,
Could you
that.
say what other funds
I
that
can.
would be?
That's our indirect cost recovery. So the Wayne County realizes that we're incurring costs operating the county programs. So things like, I'm trying to think, Johnson, where we have classrooms. Obviously, we're maintaining those classrooms and buying furniture for those classrooms and whatnot. And they give us indirect costs to be able to cover some of those routine day-to-day expenditures. So that's what that is. So that transfer to other funds would be a transfer to our general fund.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith,
Mhm.
can you remind me what, because I'm sure we approved it, facility improvements?
Yes, that's our, and they've been doing this now, I want to say this is their 3rd year, and I think it was in response to their fund balance that they started giving out grants, and it was like 3% of your expenditures that you could use for one-time expenditures, and we've got it budgeted for facility improvements. We have used some of it for the Garfield Greenhouse project. Right now, it's being budgeted primarily to help us, I believe it's summer 2026 is when we'll be tackling the projects at Garfield, and we're going to use those funds to help offset bond costs for the district. So we've got that plugged in for next year. We also did this past year over at Roosevelt, you'll recall that playground that we put in for the ASD preschool students. We use these grant dollars for that. So those are the facility improvements.
And Reese is very supportive. We
Yes.
have shared with them that our plans to supplement the Garfield bond budget with these dollars, and they felt it was a very appropriate support, especially because the school is used exclusively for Act 18 programs.
Thank you.
That'll take us to our next page, the debt retirement fund. The big change is that we're reflecting in our proposed budget the 2025 bond sale. So we'll make our first principal and interest payment for that in the 25-26 school year. One thing that I wanted to address, because honestly, when I was doing the proposed budget, it kind of caught my eye, was our ending fund balance. We've maintained a couple $1 million of fund balance in the debt fund. There are restrictions on how much you can keep in a fund balance. Really, the idea being what we levy against our taxable values is what we need to pay, like the coming year's debt payments. When we sold the 2025 bonds, so just last month when we sold the bonds, PFM took into consideration our $2.4 million worth of fund balance and used that to cover the cost for the first principal payment for the 25-26 school year. So that's the use of the fund balance, bringing it back to 175. Ms. Oquist and I have talked. That's a little bit closer than we're comfortable with. Yes. So I think the feedback to them will be, we'd like to build that up a bit going forward, in coming years. But that's why that you see that use of the fund balance. It's going towards the principal payment for our 2025 bonds. And going to our next fund, speaking of bonds, so the debt retirement fund is where we get the proceeds from. Actually, no, that goes into the bonds. This is the bond payments that we make. So two of the bond holders is in our debt retirement fund. And then on this next page is the capital projects fund where we actually do the bond projects out of. So on the top of the page is the 2023 bond. And on the bottom is the newly established 2025 bond. For the 2023 bond, I am very hopeful because I like to close things out that we will have that all spent by June 30th. So that's my hope. We're well underway for that, so I think that's something that we can accomplish. So what I wanted to do in the proposed budget is reflect zero, and the thought being if we truly do have it spent as of June 30th, then in December that fund can go away. Whereas if I included something in the proposed budget, I'd have to keep it on our books for a whole nother school year. So that's what we're doing. If it doesn't pan out, if we end up having a couple $1 million left as of June 30th, then I'll put that in our budget amendment for December, and we'll see that fund for one more year. But that's the hope. So looking down at the 2025 bond, because we just sold those bonds, we had no beginning fund balance this year for the 2025 bonds. I've reflected the proceeds from the bond, projected interest that we'll earn on those bonds for the month of June, and then I've initially plugged in some expenditures there. I don't think we'll really need $5.5 million from that, but the idea being they are construction projects. We're well underway with summer 2025 work. If we do fully expend the 2023 bond, I wanted to make sure I had authorization from the board to tap into the 2025 bond if needed. So we'll definitely be using those for 2025 work. I'm not sure if we're actually going to tap into that by June 30th. So that's what is reflected there. Moving on, next is more capital projects fund. The next one is our sinking fund. So we've got updated revenue and expenditures. I did want to mention, you don't necessarily see this on this copy, but you'll see it if you were looking at the final budget amendment workbook. It looks to be new, but it's actually something that we've received before. There was changes at the state level, and I should be more articulate about it, but long story short, we get a reimbursement. It related to personal property taxes. They made some kind of change, and the state makes us whole for the changes that they made that we wouldn't be negatively impacted by it. So this year, we received $240,000 from the state to hold us harmless for the changes they made. So that's reflected on the state revenue line. Previously, that was included in local, but it's just more appropriate, in my opinion, to include it on the state line. So it's not a new revenue, it's just a new way of reflecting it on our budget. I anticipate that our ending fund balance will be 7.2. We'll have that to start the year for next year, and just plugging in continued expenditures of about $10.6 million for next year. That'll leave us an ending fund balance of $6.5 million. The big projects, of course, out of the sinking fund, we continue to tackle our roofs across the district as well as various paving projects. On the bottom is our capital projects fund. This is where the funds from sale of property go into, and it's also where we have, for the last couple years, been doing our transfers from the general fund when we've had those one-time revenues. So this year we had a $1 million transfer into that fund. We also had sale of property of $100,000. Just got news this morning, though. This is why you just don't want to print anything, because it's only as good as, yeah.
That moment in time.
We got an email, Phil and I, that we did a bus auction, and we are going to receive a check for $135,000 for some buses that we sold. So these would be buses that were no longer needed. We were able to auction and get additional funds. So, so that $100,000 will actually be closer to $235,000, which is great.
I'm just going to mention also on the sale of property, as you know, we did come to an agreement with regard to the Ann Arbor Trail property. But we also believe that, considering the due diligence period, the likelihood of that project, the start of that project being ready to go and closed out on our end by June 30th is probably unlikely. We do believe that we obviously will update you in October and again in December, and then in March to determine if we think we need to add that to the budget. We felt that it, in all likelihood, would not be, the due diligence period will extend until that time. So we're going to be right in the neighborhood, but we did not want to add that in at this time because it's probably less likely than more likely.
So what is your timing? You're saying not even next calendar year, or?
So
by
we
June
are.
2026?
We are hopeful that it will be in the, in fiscal year '26, so sometime between July 1st of 2026 and the following year. So we are not certain that, I believe it was in total 14 months of due diligence, and so we signed that back in May, and so we'll really be coming close. So it in all likelihood would be by next summer. But we feel like it's more appropriate to not include it at this time. We will have ample opportunity as we move through next year to determine if they're going to request any extension of that timeline, or if we think they're on target, and we will be able to include that as a revenue enhancement.
You know, one item of note is looking at the ending fund balance for the proposed budget for the capital projects fund. You can see the funds are largely being utilized. These are things that have come to the board for approval. I'm thinking of the stadium lighting at the football fields, some new sound systems. We've done a number of projects that were not budgeted for out of the sinking fund or bond that we've been able to capture. But really, unless we do sell more property or do a transfer, the funds that are in this fund currently have been spoken for. So just really wanted to make everybody aware of that. Moving on to our next fund, you can see going in conservatively for next year, kind of assuming status quo for our food service fund. You know, the main update you'll see for next year is just the proposed budget. One item I did want to point out with our food service fund is included in the expenditure line, the support services, is a large amount for equipment that we're purchasing for the renovated kitchens. It's nice because we've had a fund balance in the food service fund, we've been able to alleviate those expenditures off the bond. So we're paying for the ovens out of here, the new coolers out of here. So that's reflected in the budget for this year as well as for next year. So our next is our health and welfare fund. So this is where we pay all of our health insurance out of, dental, vision. We also are self-insured for workers' comp, so that's funded out of here. I've reflected in here relatively flat cost for next year, so we'll update you as soon as we know our rates. We don't have the rates for January yet, but we haven't seen a ton. You know, sometimes it's a change in our, what would that be? The counts, the folks that take our insurance and stuff like that. So kind of going into it conservatively for next year, and I'll update the board, but that those expenditures are funded by payroll deductions from employees as well as funds. So we pay the invoices out of this fund, and then we charge it out to the grants and the general fund, and then those funds transfer funds into our health and welfare fund. So we're getting to the end, last page. On the top is our scholarship fund. This has stayed pretty consistent over the last number of years. We receive about $10,000 in revenue in each year, and an issue about $10,000 worth of expenditures. These aren't taxpayer dollars. This is all donations that we've received from the community. I can think of a few. I know there's an Angie Hillman Memorial Fund. We also have a Jim Herod Memorial Fund now. We've got a few different, I think, alumni.
James Carley.
Yep, Carly. We've got a few different alumni at some of the high schools that have set up a scholarship fund. So we're just the holders of those funds, and then the schools have different processes for folks applying for the scholarships and issuing the payments. So we're just, we're continuing to record those and monitor those. And our very last is the school activities fund. Made just a very small update for the proposed budget, moving that up to $3.3 million. This was a new GASB that they came out with a few years ago. So we have student activity funds where funds are raised in the building, and then all of the expenditures run through central office. And there was a new requirement to treat it as a special revenue fund. So every year, like in June, then I look and see what the revenue has been and the expenditures have been and record that. And we'll see that in our financial statement. So not too much excitement there. So that is our budget. Again, I said it to start, and I do want to repeat that I just appreciate how involved the board is. I appreciate the time that you set aside at our study sessions and committee meetings. You care, and you can tell, and, when we ask for input, you're always, have ideas for us, and I just very much appreciate that, so thank you.
Boy, hands went up. Mrs. Burton, I think, was first, I saw.
Mrs. Smith, can you give us some examples of what the school activities fund is used for? And this is money that comes in from the general fund into this specific
These
fund?
are fundraising, I'll say generally, or they can
Okay,
be,
fundraising.
I know one of the big ones in the high school is like parking permits. They raise, funds by charging for parking. Athletic fundraising would be accounted for in here. This would be things happening at the elementary level that aren't fundraised by the PTA. So when they do, for instance, like their photo days, I believe they get a bit of a rebate back from the focal points of the world and whatnot. So these are funds that are generated by the schools. We record them, the deposits, all that runs through our bank account, and then it should largely be used to support students. So this could be the pizza days, the popsicles with the principals, and things like that. We definitely see a wide variety of things. They've also done some nice things like staff breakfast, out of the activity fund. But that would largely be what it is. I'm thinking of athletic fundraising too. We've seen, them purchase a variety of things that wouldn't have been budgeted for out of our general fund, but things that they use the activity funds to cover.
And I know occasionally we come upon this situation with a student whose family may not be financially able to allow that student to participate in an after-school activity or something. Would that come, I know there are a few dollars that are just at the discretion of the principal for that kind of purpose. Would that come out of this budget also?
I believe, yes, and I'm thinking of example would be maybe camps and stuff like that they
Yes.
definitely don't want to exclude
Yes.
any students from
Exactly.
being able to participate, yes.
Field trips, other things, special activities, bringing an assembly in, all of those dollars would come out of that budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend you, Allison, and your department. You always do a stellar job with the budgets, and people don't realize how very good you are at what you do. When we go out to different meetings and meet with colleagues across the state, we get a first-hand look at what could go wrong. And your budgets are usually within 1%, which is simply amazing. And this year in particular, dollars for public education right now feel a little tenuous. But you have put together a budget that inspires confidence. It's realistic. And I think that you took into consideration a lot of the issues that are currently pending that we simply don't have answers for yet. So I appreciate the fact that, as always, you're continuing to make it work, even when we are still not even sure yet what we're dealing with. And I just wanted to let you know how much we appreciate that.
Thank you.
And you sort of stole my thunder. But, you thank us, Allison, for how engaged we are. But you understand that the budget is one of our three main responsibilities, so we had better be engaged. But the way you explain it, you put it on a level that even if you're not a financial person, you can understand what you're talking about. and you make it very easy for us to understand the line items, how everything works together. And as Mrs. Jarvis says, you do just a wonderful job, and it makes our job so much easier.
Good,
And
good.
we appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else from Mrs. Smith?
She is the best of the best.
She
Oh,
is.
thank
Yes, and
Thank you.
and I
The amount
want
of
to
time
thank,
she puts into this would be hard to quantify.
You betcha.
for sure.
Do you want to do this every month?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mrs.
Yes,
Smith.
thank you, Mrs. Smith.
And President Bradford, that concludes finance.
Thank you. I was going to say thank you, Mrs. Jarvis and Mr. Johnson, for speaking so eloquently on behalf of the board about Mrs. Smith and her finance team, because they are number one. We appreciate them very much, so thank you. Yep. All right, item 4, the curriculum committee. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Acosta. We have a number of items.
Thank you. And we are going to start with 4A, technology purchase for Act 18 program. Ms. Sproul.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, we talked a little bit about this last week at your meeting. I'm bringing to you tonight the proposal for some purchases of both Chromebooks and computers for our Act 18 programs. These devices are to continue, the lifespan does not go on forever for these devices. Some of these are to be used by students and others by staff within our programs. As you know, some of our Act 18 programs are very staff intensive in terms of needs to support our students. So you'll see that there is a large number of devices both for staff and students. These devices are for our VI program, our ASD program, MOCI program, and work skills. And in addition to the Chromebooks and computers, there's also a couple Chrome carts as well that are part of that quote that, I believe they're part of that quote, let me double check there, that are just to store those devices so that we can have a longer lifespan on each of them. And if they're not part of that quote, it's because, that is because we were working between 2 vendors, and it looks like those are going with the other vendors, so I apologize for bringing that up. This is our larger of the 2 purchases that we're making at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? Mrs. Frank?
Thankful to be able to provide these for the students and to help them along their educational journey. So I thank you
Yes.
we're able to buy them.
And you also reminded me there that this is all pre-approved through our Act 18 budget, so all of this expense will be funded through Act 18.
Perfect. Thank you. And we'll be voting on this next week. Item 4B is purchase of humanities textbook. Mrs. O'Brien. We asked her for books.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll start with humanities. This is the first one that we're talking.
Okay,
I think it just got a hurry.
I am, those are, I will explain in just a minute. So I am bringing a recommendation from Mrs. Lindsay Rousseau, who is our social studies and ELA coordinator, who worked with the CAL, the content area leader, this past year to look at updating our materials for humanities. Mrs. Thursum is the CAL, and she brought back the work that she did to her professional learning team each time we had a PLT day. So not always do teachers want to work after school on a textbook committee. So Mrs. Thursum and Mrs. Rousseau worked together. And one of the things that we felt comfortable with this team looking at materials is really there were no high school humanities materials. They're all at the college level. So the book that we are recommending an adoption for is an updated version of what we currently have. The other books that they asked vendors to look at, they said they do not recommend for high school. So what we did is look back at our 2009 version of this same book, and it is in a single volume. What's being passed around is the updated version, which has been broken into semesters, so kids don't have to carry the full book all year, because humanities is a year-long course, so they broke it by semesters. Humanities 1, which is semester 1, humanities 2. We do have some students who may move at semester and join humanities based on their other classes and whatnot, but for the most part, kids stay in it all year long. It meets their ELA requirement for 12th grade, so we have a lot of students who take it. And so going back to the original version that we had, the 2009 version, our Common Core got changed in 2010. So it not only is not a their book, it's just in a broken out version. And it has an online platform now that they created in the last several years, and we've had access to the new platform even though we had the old book, so teachers have been able to kind of step into both of those worlds. What we're recommending is a purchase of 210 bundled books and licenses with an additional 65 licenses only. So we've kind of moved to classroom sets of books since students have the accessibility at home online. But if a student needs a book, we have classroom sets for them to check one out and use at home. So this book is published by Cengage Publishing. It is a 2026 version of the textbook, and we are purchasing 6 years of digital licenses. This purchase is $73,947.50 and will come out of the secondary textbook budget, which is been supported by the Wayne County Enhancement Millage.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. It helps to look at the textbooks. I think it also, just for the sake of not carrying that huge textbook, breaking it into 2 segments is really helpful. Any questions? Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what you just said. The print copies each come with a digital copy as well. And then you're also recommending a purchase of extra digital copies. This is exciting to me because those are constantly being updated. And, it's hard to update a print. You'd have to get a new book every year, which is cost prohibitive to say the least. And I mean, this is not exactly light reading, guys. So I love the idea of having the digital copies. You know that I've been harping on this for years. And I'm really excited because, again, that helps our students to stay current with what's going on. It helps our teachers to stay current in the standards as the standards change. And it is good stewardship as well. So thank you.
You are welcome.
Mrs. Burton.
And I ask this mostly for the public's benefit each time. As this purchase is, I assume this is the same as many have been in past years, where we have the digital license and the physical book are bundled. We do not have a cost savings if we choose one over the other. It's a joint purchase.
They right. So the
We don't have that
balance is
option.
we're not saving. You could go all digital or all textbooks, but the price difference is very same. If you had 210 of both, it would be very similar. They give us a break when they bundle them together, and we buy a set of 210 bundled, and then 65 licenses in addition. So every child gets the digital license, and then we have classroom sets. So every child doesn't need to have the book. Some are very comfortable using their Chromebook or whatever device they have at home, but some kids would much prefer to have a book. This is not a consumable book. It is a soft cover book, but is not a consumable. So it's not expected that students are writing and notating like we do in an ELA class. It's a textbook.
Okay. And it's from my memory, going back, looks like most of our textbooks have had a digital option for the last 10 plus years now. Is that?
I think really since COVID, we've gotten better digital access. So prior to that, we got a PDF version of a book. So it looked like the same pages, kids could have access. then probably in the last 10 years, that technology has just gotten better. Now it can read it to them, it can highlight, you can hover over a vocabulary word, it'll explain it, it can take you to a video. So it's just exploded in 10 years, but I would say yes, since I started this position, we did get digital. Not all of our books came with digital, but a lot, but it was very stagnant information. It was just basically instead of taking a book. Now, it supports a kid's learning by providing them lots of different ways to access that information.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Frank?
I have two questions. One is, how are we doing as a district? Not that you can answer for the whole district, but how are we doing with keeping our textbooks, right? I mean, many years ago, you had to check it out. It was a numbered book to make sure that we get it back. Are we having a loss of books, and are we doing a fairly good job of keeping textbooks that we buy, the students are turning back in, that we're keeping track of them, or how many are we losing over years? Not that you would have that number, but you're not being asked to replace them on a fairly regular basis.
I'm not. Since I've been in this role, one school lost a set of textbooks when they got renovated.
Okay.
And when they came back, they were sure they'd find them, and they never found those boxes. Other than that, we've pretty much updated every core course in the last 10 years. Now we're, to a lot of our strong electives, and I don't get asked to buy additional numbers. Maybe if a section, so Churchill's adding a section, can we
Yeah.
have another class set? Or Mrs. Oquist and I both teach humanities, can we each have our own class set so we don't have to, in case we're both
Yes.
teaching first hour? But loss of books, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And then my second question is, you said that this was the only one that's available basically for high school. Are our numbers, are students actually taking this class? Like, is there not a textbook because not many students in the state of Michigan are taking a humanities class? Do we still have enough numbers to be offering this class, I guess is what I'm asking. If there's not a lot of textbooks that are out there,
We
do
do
we have a lot of
have
kids?
enough students. So
Okay.
we offer it as a 12th grade option for ELA to take humanities. It is offered at all three of our high schools, and we run at least one section
Okay,
at all three high schools.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 4C, the purchase of AP Microeconomics textbook. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on micro and macro together. So the AP micro and macro teachers looked at new materials together. So even though we offer both courses, they did the textbook review as a single team. So this group of teachers looked at the current resource is from 2008. It is not aligned to our current AP micro or macro test, so that test was updated in 2022. They reviewed 4 different textbooks and 1 supplemental book. They piloted 2 books, the Krugman's, which is the one we're going to be recommending, and AMSCO. So AMSCO is a book I brought last year for another AP course. It is a consumable, and this committee felt like they preferred the textbook than a consumable, so they chose that book. So microeconomics is currently only offered at Stevenson. So it is not, they do not fill this course at the other 2 high schools. And so Stevenson offers it 1 semester a year. It's sometimes the fall, sometimes the spring. And what they are recommending this committee is this additional supplemental resource called Strive for 5, so that students are continuing to practice for the AP test if they take microeconomics in the fall. So it provides them a continuation for them to prepare to take the AP test in the spring. So we are recommending a purchase of that for both classes, but for microeconomics, since that's what we are talking about. So our purchase for for microeconomics is a little bit different. We're recommending a purchase of the online license for microeconomics because micro and macro use one book. So this book is separated into both AP macro and micro. So Stevenson students who are in microeconomics will have access to the books because we are purchasing them for macroeconomics. So in breaking the two apart, I put the digital licenses for microeconomics and the Strive for 5 for microeconomics as one purchase. So that purchase is for $24,898.34. So that is just for students' digital access, but they will have access to the textbooks also because we are buying classroom sets for each high school through macroeconomics. So a little wonky there.
It does make sense, though, and I know Mr. Gobble, who teaches this course, also provides at least one day a week after school for the second semester until they take the test. So if they had micro in the fall, so that they don't move away from that knowledge, he offers a voluntary option. And so having a resource like this for students to use both independently and with some guided practice, I think makes a lot of sense to keep them immersed in that, even though they're in all likelihood taking macro the second semester. They're not moving away from their knowledge in micro if they're able to stay into that each week.
Oh, yeah, thanks. And I think their success rate is pretty good on the
Yes.
micro and
Outstanding.
macro exam.
Yes,
Yeah,
they do a
I know
nice
my
job.
kids took this course. And it is a little tricky because you have to really watch your schedule to get the micro and the macro both in order, I think, to take the exam, if I'm not mistaken, the AP exam, so,
Yeah,
I
the
think
exams
they're-
are all in May.
yeah.
And they're on
They're
separate
two
days.
separate,
They're
right?
two separate.
Correct.
Yeah, they're
They are
two
two
separate,
separate
but I
tests.
remember it's, like you said, you have to take one in the fall, and you don't get to take it till May, so
Right.
it's,
Yep.
yeah.
And this Strive for 5 additional supplemental resource, it provides kids with some practice that we didn't have
Yeah,
with
that
the
looks-
old version of the textbook.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
there's
looks really
online
great.
practice through different things, but the teachers really liked this book and thought it would be a helpful resource for kids.
And that's a consumable, we're gonna, did you say?
That is not a consumable.
Oh, they're not.
Boy, they look like, that's what my question was gonna be, because they look like it.
Yeah,
Mrs. Burton.
I will 100% double check with Mrs. Russo, but I do not believe that they are, it is a.
So they must write it on something else, huh?
Or have it online.
Yeah,
Oh, it's online? Yeah, is that book online, those two books are online? Because I see a book coming here. A
that's
hard-
the textbook,
Yes.
and that does have an online platform, and that's a supplemental.
And that does not have an online?
And I do not believe it has an
Okay.
online.
Huh.
But I will let you know for sure.
Okay.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Yes.
As you said, micro is only offered at Stevenson, and that's one semester, and then we run one class of that. And it's not offered at the other, it's offered, but it's not, they don't have enough students expressing
There's-
interest to take it.
There's not interest at the other two high schools.
Okay, is macro offered at all three?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Oh,
And then a separate question, since we've been talking quite a bit tonight about our books being aligned, which is enormously important. You may not know the answer to this off the top of your head, and if not, you can get back to us on it, but what books do we have now, right now, that are not aligned, that we need to get updated so that they are aligned in
We have
courses?
not updated all of our elective area books quite yet. We're getting there.
Okay.
But I can get you a list.
Okay.
We are chipping away every year at more and more. All our cores are done. There are
Okay.
still some elective areas that.
So our 4 core basic classes are all aligned? Okay, and we're working on these?
Yep.
Okay.
In some cases, coming around the second time.
ELA Study Sync is asking to look at new materials. They are one of the first
Okay,
materials we got in 2017.
okay.
And they are asking to look at some new materials next year. It will have been
Yeah,
6 years.
10 yeah. Yeah, if you could get us just a list of the classes those that we do have that are aligned and those that we're still working on, that would be helpful for us to know and kind of know how big of a mountain or a little tiny molehill we're looking at.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
This looks hard.
It's, yes, for sure.
It's AP, it's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
It is a college level class.
Yeah, that's great.
We'll move on to item 4D, the purchase of AP macro.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna summarize just a little bit more. So macroeconomics, AP macroeconomics is offered at all 3 high schools. It is also a semester-long course. It could be only offered in the fall at one of the high schools. So again, we are recommending the same textbook for both courses, but there is a separate Strive for 5 for macroeconomics to prepare kids for the AP test. So they are recommending purchasing a bundle of textbooks and digital licenses. So there's class sets of the books, and there will be enough on this quote for Stevenson for students in micro in addition. And then this purchase is $55,681.61. So the textbook committee kind of did it together, and then I tried to separate it out so that it made sense for each course. Again, we have a curriculum for AP Micro. It just doesn't run at the other 2 schools. Macroeconomics at all 3 high schools.
Mrs. Byrne?
Is this, are we paying for this still out of the funds that we received from Wayne County Enhancement Millage, or are they not necessarily designated as such?
It is all part of the general fund, and so we put those dollars as part of our overall budget,
Okay.
and then we allocate those out as we do with our 5 core priority areas as
Okay.
determined by the Wayne County Enhancement Millage, and textbook and replacement and materials being current is one of those priorities. So there isn't a specific line item, Wayne County Enhancement Millage, and these are the only things. Those dollars do go into the general fund, but we have directed them, and it has allowed us to keep an annual textbook budget, which was not in place prior. It was in place, but it was
Right.
unfortunately
Yeah.
due to budget cuts
Diminished.
taken
Very
away.
small.
But since the enhancement millage, it has been reinstated and utilized very, very well. We've updated over 40 courses
Excellent. Okay, good.
over the past several years, and also large scale, like the 5-6 HMH program. We're looking at the math for the K4 next year, which would be another significant adoption.
Okay, good. Thank you.
President Bradford?
Thank you. Mrs. O'Brien, thank you for bringing in the materials. I think that really helps give us an idea of what we're looking at, and we appreciate that.
Thank you for reminding me of that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I didn't mean to drop the ball on that.
Oh, no, never.
If anybody wants a longer look, just let us know, and you can certainly borrow that.
I would also.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. O'Brien. And that concludes our curriculum committee report.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. We're going to move on to item 5, Building and Site Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Burton.
Thank you very much. And the first thing on our agenda this evening under Building and Site is 5A, the LECC parking lot light installation. We'll hear from Mr. Francis.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Not sure I needed the computer, but just in case. So we were starting, like we said, with the ECC lighting. So quick backstory was that during the school year, we recognized that the parking was filling up quite quickly, if you will. And so we created a gravel stone parking lot on the property. These are lights for that parking lot, not the asphalt parking lot. So these are 3 poles, one on either end, one in the middle, because as we know, when winter comes, early mornings and pretty early in the evening, it becomes dark. So this is really something that is, we want to do for just better visibility, a little more safety, et cetera, for when you're parking through there.
That's primarily staff parking.
Yes, we direct the staff to that area, so. If you recall from looking at the packet, this was Omnia, NCPA contract pricing through Voss. We solicited quotes from 3 companies. One company did not respond. We do have 2 quotes that I did include into your packet, and the lowest responsible bid was through Voss, and it's also nice to know that they use the contract pricing as well. So this is something we would like to get the ball rolling on so that we have it ready in time for as the timing of the day changes and whatnot. So we want to work on this through the summer, and if it bleeds into the beginning of the school year, that's okay, because we still have some pretty long sunshine days through August and September.
Excellent. Comments or questions on this item? I appreciate the fact that we're still making some minor changes over at the ECC as we find out that things are needed, and seems like it's one of them. I mean, I hesitate to use the word minor.
Yeah.
It's parking lot, it's not a minor purchase, but I'm glad that we are continuing to look at things, and even though it wasn't, in the plan from day one necessarily, I'm glad that we're still looking at these kind of things, listening to our staff who are working there, our parents who are visiting there each day, and making the changes to improve it.
There's multiple. I mean, from a secretary saying, I need an extra file cabinet, and just learning as we go along,
Yeah.
because you have to live in it. You have to
Exactly.
live in a space, find out what the day-to-days are. I know the principal has talked about some tweaks that she's making to timing of schedules coming for the next school year. We're doing physical things like the parking lot and the lights. So it's one of those things that you have a brand-new building with
Yeah.
all these new programs and new families, and you just learn through the year.
Yep,
And
sounds
you make
good.
adjustments.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Mr. Francis, it is sort of a little bit off the scope, but we were going to put vegetation in on the north side of the ECC.
There was a landscaping package that was completed. When you say which type of vegetation were we?
Was that the landscape, is that all in now on the
That-
north side?
That was done, yes. We did have a landscape, an architectural landscape person design something, and then that went in with the, through the bond when we built the building at the end.
Yeah, because I know there was the concern about the headlights.
I-
Second part of the plan.
I will check on it. Is there something specific that I'm not thinking of that I want to be able to ask them for?
We can look back.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I can check on that.
thanks.
Any other comments or questions? All righty, on to the next, I'm sorry, Mrs. Frank.
I know, too late. Do
Jump
we
in.
have cameras at that new parking lot? Do we have, like, safety, security?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, any other comments or questions? All righty, and we'll put this on the agenda then for the vote next week.
Okay.
Next item is 5B, the furniture purchase for Churchill from the 2021 bond. Mr. Francis.
So this is just part of the bond work that's happening at Churchill this summer. This specific furniture purchase, I wanted to bring to the board. It is for spaces that are around the LMC. As we know, the hub in the center of that building is the LMC. And then unlike Stevenson and Franklin, which is on an exterior, it has quite a bit all the way around it. So we've got spaces around it. The counseling office is there. What has traditionally been department offices are around it. There are classrooms around it. So in preparation, we did go through with NBS, which is our furniture company, and we looked at the spaces. We spoke with administration, spoke with a couple of the building's department chairs, and we came up with a plan. And then speaking more specifically to the principal and the administrative team, they want to make some tweaks on how those spaces are going to be used. So this is just new furniture that would match up with items that is new for, in the LMC. The CIC is the Career Information Center. That's the section of the counseling office that students go in and use. They do some work in there. They do some investigating on schools and careers and paths and things like that. We're doing some physical work in there, some actual construction work in that space. And with that, we thought it made sense to also update the furniture in the area instead of putting the old furniture back in. Administrators in the building, the principal, and one of the assistant principals had explained like what's coming out of it's not going to really work in that space anymore. The other rooms around it, I wanted to just give the board and anybody who's listening in on the meeting just some information on that. The building at Churchill, those staff spaces and offices around it had traditionally been where staff goes in and eats lunch or they spend time on their prep. Years ago when the building was much fuller and people might have been a teacher might have been on a cart. So if you were off third hour, I might come into your room third hour and teach my class and you had a place to go during your prep time and work. Nowadays, that's not how the building works. There's plenty of room, plenty of space that folks aren't having to necessarily often use other people's rooms on their preparatory hour. So the principal has went through this with us as well with MBS and explained how she wants to utilize it. And while it's still a work in progress, there are spaces that may have been at one time like the math office, and they're going to turn that into space for students to use, or the English office to be, in fact, like a writing center on certain days at certain times, and having like a social studies office get to be used by students for math help, etc. So they're really trying to re-envision that space for today's students and staff, and with the renovations coming, we worked through the furniture that it can be flexible furniture, tables can get moved around on casters, you've got chairs that are easy to move, there's a little bit of storage in there, and then still for surplus textbooks and for especially the English office, they have to unload and switch out some of the novels that they have because they can't hold all of them in their English classrooms. So it's really going to be a nice juxtaposition of like there's an ability when it's empty for students to be able to use these spaces along with staff still having a place that they can go to lunch or store their surplus text, etc. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of the background on what the spaces are that we're talking about. And then as to the dollars, and I had this in the memo, the total came from MBS at $127,055.67. We're working with Brian Weber and Plant Moran. Real Point, we landed on, just for the sake of, in case we missed a chair or needed a couple items, we're gonna, when I bring it to the board for the voting meeting, we're just gonna have it at not to exceed $135,000. These are bond dollars that have been captured from previous projects that the board had approved for renovations and furniture, et cetera. We've been able to recapture those. That's where this money is coming from. So I wanted to also let you know that it is former contingencies that we're going to utilize for this.
Comments or questions on this item? I'm really glad to hear that we're continually looking for ways to utilize our space for maximum benefit of our students. If it served a different purpose in the past, but we can utilize it better now, let's do it. So I'm happy to hear about that.
Yep.
Alrighty, and then this will be on the agenda for next week's voting meeting.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is our item 5C, our food service purchase for 2025-2026.
Many of these vendors probably sound familiar to the board. This is the time of year where we we bring this to the board for your authorization, and then the food service department creates those purchase orders for the year with these vendors. So, like I said, Van Aerden is a company that I've probably said 20 times at different board meetings. That's where the bulk of, I mean, you see the $3 million is a large number, because that's the main company that we get our products from in the kitchens. Van Aerden has been bid out as through Wayne Risa, so that's one's good to go. Cedar Crest, again, have said this at least once a year coming to the board. This is our dairy. And that's actually been contract pricing through CoPro. It's a program for consortium and contract pricing. So that's where Cedar Crest comes through on that. That one's for $300,000. We use our former numbers, and we want to try our best. I know a handful of years back, we'd have to come back in July or June or whenever, and we found like we had actually spent more. So we're really trying to hone in on this and maybe putting a few extra dollars in them, because it's simply just a not to exceed type of item. And if we don't spend it all, we're not going to go out and buy a whole bunch of more milk just for because there's money on the PO, right? So the next one is AGD Pizza / Domino's. This is the second year of the 3-year contract. As you recall, we do bid those out. We had that contract with AGD Pizza, Domino's. They're still our pizza company. We're in that second of 3 years, and we've got a number of $250,000 on that for the purchase order for the 25-26 school year. As we move into MMAS Solutions, these are those fiber trays. These are the ones that replaced the styrofoam a few years back. I put into your packet the information. We had 3 vendors, and MMAS Solutions was the lowest responsible of those. Had the best pricing for the same product, so we've been using them the past couple of years. We're looking to continue with them.
So those are the compostable.
But yes. And so this is the company that we would request the approval, $200,000, and we'd make an open PO for the 25-26 school year for that as well. And the last one, which is just for me the most fun one, is the Livonia Italian Bakery here in Livonia. That's $100,000, and again, I put this document into your packet as well. Frankly, Livonia Italian Bakery is the only one that meets the requirements of the nutrition requirements, so they're the winner. They're the ones that we've been using for several years. So those are these, I say standard, but just the items that we usually see each year for the Food and Nutrition Services Department and their purchases throughout the upcoming school year.
Sounds good. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. I know, Mr. Francis, if you listen to the television or radio, everybody's concerned with food prices. How do these prices overall stack up with the last couple of years?
Prices are going up everywhere. This amount we raised up as well. We still have meals for all, and at least we're presuming that, and I have a sense, and Mrs. Short has a sense that would not be pulled out of the state's budget for this coming year, so we're preparing for that. We did raise this up to $3 million. It was, I believe, 2.5 last year, so we are anticipating that.
Seeing the cost increases.
Yeah, I would expect that, given what we see, but as long as we keep getting reimbursed for it.
Yeah, these are,
That helps.
as we do it, we get the reimbursable meals.
Thank
One
you.
would hope. Any other comments or questions on this item? All right. Yes.
Would we put this on a consent agenda, or do we want to talk about it due to the pricing of, or is this sufficient enough to discuss tonight?
I'm fine with consent agenda if everybody else is fine with it. Is everyone else comfortable with consent agenda? Sure. Okay.
Okay, great, thanks.
For those at home, consent agenda is a vehicle we can use to vote on several items all at one time, and they need to be, or typically are, of a routine or recurring nature, not anything unusual or unique. So, all righty. And the last item under building and site is item 5D, the purchase of high school athletic sound systems. Mr. Francis.
So, as the board knows very well from the previous purchases and taking some tours, we've been doing quite a bit over the last couple of years with some athletic facilities. The sound systems is something that we are taking a look at, and I'm bringing to the board for your discussion and hopeful approval. Part of this really popped up with the athletic directors when we got the purchase for the new lights at the stadiums, and we know that it's a much much different than what we currently have. And it actually ties in sound with the light shows and whatnot. And they can do that with what's there now, but the conversation with the EDs has been anyway, we really need a better sound system. So much goes on, so many people use the athletic facility outside, whether it be athletic events or just even outdoor assemblies, etc. So that was one piece. When we got in and redid the pools through the bond, the 3 high school pools, the sound systems that were in there also, we said we absolutely are getting these. So we bundled this together with the third item, which is for the main gyms. They don't have up-to-date sound systems, if any sound systems at all. Some of it has been portable, etc. So we had looked into multiple systems with different companies. It's hard to get exact apples to apples from companies. They have some of their own thoughts and they look at things a little differently. But what we did come up with was the company Rollins Soundcom. That was the company that we felt had certainly had the best price, but also had what was very preferable to the athletic administrators for the high schools, the types of sound systems. We also had Tim Clan, he's our administrator of IT. He had been looped in, he reviews the items. He and the ADs and I have talked, especially the Churchill AD, Casey Conway. He really headed up this particular project. So we do have 3 quotes from 3 different vendors I put in the packet. And again, similar to the lighting, the Rollin is actually using contract pricing as well from the PPM Cooperative Purchasing contract. So we have done our due diligence with regard to pricing, but also with the system themselves. And the 3 athletic administrators are very excited that this is going to be going. And I appreciate the board and Mrs. Oquist letting me get this in on this June meeting, because any lead time, the company already said, we'll start ordering, because they know that it's a timing item. We're going to try to push to get this in as soon as possible, but obviously we have to wait for components to come in and installation to occur in 3 different locations at 3 different buildings. So this is a lot of work.
Okay. Comments or questions on this item? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Phil, going through this, it was a rather lengthy quote or proposal. Does this include speakers?
In each one of them, I'm gonna say yes, because we need speakers for them to work.
Yeah, if you're gonna upgrade.
That's like the sound system portion of it. It has, I'm not an audiophile, but they have like the wiring was an important part. The amplifiers were an important part, and speakers are an important part. So I'm trying to run through. They call things, especially when I look at the Rollin, they have microphone systems. The best spot to look, I think, is when you look in page, oh goodness, they don't have page numbers on them, but it has all of them, the engineering and the installation services laid out, and it talks about the wire pulls and all those types of things. It's hard to understand what that is, but under each building and the project, like the first one when it talks about the Churchill, Franklin, Stevenson football audio system, you can see that they have mixers, inputs, amps. I do want to confirm with them with regard to the speakers. I see them down in the gym system. If you look down the SM2110-P speakers under the Churchill Gym Audio. So they just have all these different names, and then they shorten them, and they get
For the football.
on the football, yeah.
It's
Yeah, you kind of, it starts to kind of bleed together when you see, because they have their own, like, VT112 AMP, you have to know it's
I
an
know
amp,
what it is,
right?
right.
Yeah, you don't really know exactly what it is, but you know it's an amplifier, just from that. And
Okay.
there's Bluetooth, if you look through some of the other ones in the gyms, when needed, they have some Bluetooth components as well. So again, as the companies would come in and they would bring us their proposals, we would forward them over to IT, and say, does all this look standard? Does all this look appropriate for the spaces? And are we okay with getting it hooked up? Is there anything special that we're gonna need that we might be missing currently?
Yeah, I look on, now I'm looking on page 14. It's got VT 2210 dual element line array speaker, so.
Okay. Where'd you see a page number?
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet, it's just,
Oh, okay. Oh, you're that 14, okay.
yeah, it's, the top it says ISP technology.
Okay, I had printed off the original quote, and so I
Okay.
don't have.
Yeah, once I
page
saw
numbers.
woofer on there,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, that
So,
answers my
yep.
question.
And this was one, and all three companies were good that came in, and we've worked with one of them specifically
Okay.
in the past, who we like very much as well. But it's just a matter of, the pricing was good, the product is good, the conversations that Mr. Conway had with the rep was very good and positive, so, and he's been really kind of, whenever we ask him a question, ask for an update on something, he's been very quick to respond.
And I just want to note, this is an example of one of those capital project items that Mrs. Smith referred to earlier, that we were able to supplement the sinking fund and the bond dollars with some of the capital project dollars, because we've been able to capture some of those one-time revenue items and really put it in a savings account for these types of things. This is not normally a purchase we would have been bringing to you at this point in time, but it is one of those pieces that will add an enhancement. If you've been to a basketball game or you've seen a performance by the POM team in the competition gyms, and you're hearing the announcers, it's very difficult to make some of that out. When you're in the pool, it's a whole nother level of challenge to get some clarity through the speaker systems. And we really are in a couple of those places using portable speakers, and that are very, very outdated. And then really you get to the Mac Daddy, and you think about on the football field. So whether it's the marching band, whether it's announcing a soccer, a football, a lacrosse game, really to have these speakers, it may seem like a luxury item, but for the investment we've made into our student athletes, the programs that go on, as well as many of our activities that utilize these spaces, I think it really is a good use of our capital projects dollars. It's an expense, but the fact that we're able to do it at all three high schools in all three areas is something we're really pretty excited about.
For this cost, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Comments or questions on this item? Mr. McFarland?
Yeah, this is very exciting. I think if you only did one without the other, it would have, not a letdown, it still would have been awesome, but I think now
Yeah.
you're gonna encompass the whole kind of arena rock
Yes.
feel. Very excited to see this in action in
Yeah.
the upcoming seasons.
We are too.
Mr. Francis, I noticed that they've given several references, including some surrounding school districts that are comparable size. Have you had the opportunity to either talk to the folks or go out and listen to what it sounds like? Because unlike a textbook where you can see what you're buying an audio experience.
I did not, Mr. Conway was the one that led through these, so I did not go to those spaces. I will give him a call tomorrow to confirm his experience.
Okay, okey-doke. Yeah, that would be my only request, is
Yeah.
if someone
Yeah. He gave the recommendation.
Talk to and/or listen to those that are right around us, comparable districts that have utilized these products.
Yeah, that's good. And yeah, like I said, he headed it up. We've had our athletic administrators have been amazing. These past few years with the items that we've been purchasing and installing, oftentimes one of them steps up and says, I'll take the lead on this particular project. We let them gain that experience, and some of them already have the experience in doing these things. And so all three of them, when they have picked up that ball, they have run with it each time. So
Okay.
I thank Mr. Conway for this one as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? All righty, that does it for building and site.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. All right, we're gonna move on to item 6, the policy.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Francis. Moving right on.
Francis, we asked Mrs. O'Brien to bring us textbooks. We could take some, what did we do? What did we do? Pizza rolls.
It'll be available during the school year.
Oh, whoops, I didn't have my microphone on. Okay. We're going to item 6, the policy committee. Mrs. Frank?
We do not have anything.
We do not. We updated the board last week on our plan for this coming year, and Mrs. Junta will be going through all of the policies we updated this year and ensuring that everything is online. We did quite a bit of work this year. I want to thank the policy committee for working with us on that and for members of our cabinet team. And we are already planning for our first policies to come to you in the August-September timeframe.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. All right, moving on to item 7, the personnel committee. I'm turning it over to Mr. McFarland.
And we get to welcome Mrs. Keats and Mr. Abate to learn about, what are we on first? The retirees or retention? You guys take the floor, please.
Well, thank you.
Love that, yeah. Well, no, each year we request, and we very much have appreciated your approval to accept resignations and be able to recall staff from our office rather than having to set a special meeting for it. It just keeps, let's do that. It just keeps us able to move as quick.
Look like you're Italian.
That's really hard. I don't think I can do that. It just allows us to move significantly quicker and to, and to bring people back on a quick turnaround timeline if we possibly can. And to post and hire and all those things on the fastest possible timeline, because we know that everything is highly competitive, and we're in a bit of a battle with all of our surrounding districts for the best candidates, and we like to win those.
Yes.
So that requires definitely some efficiency and some speed, and we appreciate very much you having the faith in us to do that.
Any comments or questions?
To go on the regular meeting agenda for approval, 2 separate items.
Nothing for me?
I think you guys do a great job on this.
Thank you, appreciate it. And we'll need both of those items to go on the regular agenda for the next.
Oh, we're on item B. You don't want to, that was all together.
Oh, sorry. I
Nope,
might
that
have
should be separate.
Are we doing it all together?
No, you know what?
No, the first one should be resignation, so we ask your
Yes.
permission to accept resignations on your behalf at this time, and that's the first one. Yes.
And the second one is the callback.
For the same reasons.
Just kind of roll them together because they're just kind of wedded that way.
So, yes, and then on to, so acceptance of resignations and then callbacks. So on to item B.
Yes.
Those were all good? All right, excellent. Ms. Burton, yes.
I'm fine with these going on the consent agenda. Is that all right? Is that where you were going with that, Mr. Johnson, too?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, these are things we do every year, so.
Okay.
And we appreciate, again, you're right. I mean, things move very quickly. And if we were to handcuff you and have to come back to the board every time, it would really slow the process down. And we trust your judgment.
Thank you.
We always have. You guys do a great job, and this really smooths things out for us. Thanks.
We're looking for the best for LPS, so,
Oh, I like that.
the best for LPS. Put it on a t-shirt.
I'm gonna copyright that right now.
Anything else?
No.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you both very much.
All right, that ends item 7, personnel. Thank you, Mr. McFarland. We're going to move on to item 8, the legislative committee. Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you very much. We have no agenda items tonight unless Mrs. Oquist has an update for us.
I do not. I appreciate you letting me share a brief update during the, when Mrs. Smith shared the budget. Felt that was an applicable time. That really is on our radar at this moment.
Thank you for keeping us posted.
Absolutely.
We have no agenda items.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. Well, that means we are at the end of our meeting. Oh, Mr. Francis is coming on up.
Just to get you
Oh, come on back up.
the question that Mrs. Burton had was, the answer is that, yes, Mr. Conway did with Novi and worked with their AD.
Okay, good. Just talk to them, make sure it's what we want.
In a very loving way, said he's a very type A person and does all things the right way. So he was impressed with with what he learned from him.
Okay, good. That's what I fully expected, you know, if it could, that we would have checked, you know, references before they came to the board, but with this large of a purchase, and like I said, since it's something as intangible as sound, we've got to either talk to people who have used it or go listen to it ourselves and
Yeah.
make sure that we are buying exactly what we want to buy.
Yep,
So,
and he actually had heard it at one of the unified games at the field.
perfect.
Oh, nice.
That's even better. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Is there any more business to come before the board this evening? Well, I just want to invite our guests at home to tune in next week for our regular meeting on June 23rd. That'll be the final meeting of the year. And then we'll be back, like we said, on July 21st for our organizational meeting. So we wish everybody a great evening. Good night.